Hey everybody, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always with some ideas and insights, what to pay attention to when you're growing and scaling your business, and you know you need to get fast, and you know you need to have your ducks in a row, because otherwise this is just not going to work. So this week is a special week, as in we're back to work after Labor Day, and collectively it seems like everybody's agreeing on that, summer's kind of getting to an end here. Most people's vacations are over. Most people are kind of getting back to work, but with fresh energy, because we need to. But it does seem like that's happening anyway. A lot of people I talked to this week are like, okay, I feel like I'm actually ready to go. I'm excited about what I can still create for the rest of this year. And that's really what I want to talk about, because Q4 could be your kind of meh, or it could be your miracle quarter. That's the best quarter ever, that makes sure that you're not just tying up loose ends and, dotting your I's and crossing your T's, but you're actually creating that platform, that foundation that you get to launch off of for the next year. So this is really that time to dust off your boots, get into fresh mode of what can we create. And this is the conversation you get to have with yourself, but it's also the conversation that is massively important that you have with your team. Whether it's a team of one or a team of 100 or 1,000, everybody needs to be on board with this fresh push, fresh focus, fresh energy. So, you want to think about this like it's the last quarter. You could be kind of putting yourself on cruise control, but it definitely is not. We don't want to be on cruise control until the holiday parties start, because that means you're losing some very, very important time. And like I said, part of this is also using this quarter kind of as a sandbox and as that opportunity to really use and distill what you learn from everything that's already happened. So no coasting right now, no relaxing. We got to really use this time for all it's worth. So what this time is your best time to refocus and prepare, and make sure that when the next year does arrive, that you are ready to go, because you did everything already that most people aren't even approaching until November, December, and maybe even January, or not at all. So it's time to kick into high gear for Q4. And you want to start with that. You want to start about that with really making sure that you do a really thorough retrospective about what's already happened this year. So you want to think about, and this is, you think this through on your own, so you have your own perspective, but then it's really important to get your team in the room before you share your perspective, hear their perspective, because we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that we're co-creating from there, and that we have all different perspectives and voices in the room, because that's going to make your thinking bigger. It's going to give you a lot more context when you are coming from a place of really having heard all the different perspectives, your boots on the ground, the people who are actually handling the stuff. That can give you so much important information to make sure that you're really setting this next year up right, starting with dialing in this next quarter that's coming up right quick, the best way possible. So we want to think about, like I said, think through this on your own, and then workshop this through with your team. What major bets did we make? Where did we take risks? Where did we do new stuff that really paid off? And then, of course, you also want to think, what did we risk? What did we do that, sounded good, shiny gold object, whatever. It was a great idea at the time, but either we already shut it down, or we got to think about it's time to shut it down because it's wasting our resources. And that's like, as a small business, it's always so important that not just every player on your team is an A player, but also that all the projects, all the initiatives are initiatives and projects that either increase revenue, increase profit, set up opportunities, or provide some sort of long-term perspective that's really important for us. If it's not, if what you're doing is not doing any of those four, you might want to think about not doing it anymore, because likely it's just draining what you don't have to drain. So we want to look at, the major bets, what paid off, what didn't pay off. Then, which ones of our true and proven strategies, like the goodies that have always worked, what's still working. Because a lot of times it gets very, very tempting when you have new stuff to just kind of go for the new stuff and stop doing what is already working, what has been working. And suddenly you're missing a lot of opportunity from something that's most of the time cheaper to run, because you already have put all the infrastructure in place. So you want to make sure you don't stop something too soon. So, of course, the biggest question to ask, or a very important one to ask, is, where did we miss the mark? And that may be new stuff, maybe tried and proven stuff that stopped working, but where did we miss the mark and why? So that's the biggest question, right? Miss the mark and why. And especially the why part, you want to make sure that you get a lot of different perspectives, because it's going to look really different from the top than it does at the bottom. So of course, from there, we're going to have that conversation about what can we improve? Like, what do we need to do right now in kind of the short term, and what do we need to change, set up, or redefine in the long run? There's always, you want to always have that two-track thinking. It's like, okay, what do we need to do right now so it can make a quick difference, and also what kind of adjusting do we have to keep doing so that this is just getting better and better and better. So what lessons did we learn overall? And that's kind of aggregating all the information you have, looking at this kind of in the big picture, and making sure that you can boil this down into themes, patterns, angles, so that you kind of understand how any of these opportunities or these misses fit into the big picture. And then a really courageous question for you to ask is asking for feedback. So you want to ask your team to give you feedback about how the year has gone as a whole. And then you also want to ask them to let you know, like, anything that they really need from you that you need to do differently, whatever it is. And so you want to get the feedback from them, and then they also want to give each other feedback. Now, this is something you have to teach them how to do, because we don't just want to have a bunch of complaints happening. So you want to teach them how to do feedback the right way, so that it's constructive, that it can be received, and that it actually does the job. So make sure that you give them a good structure for that, so that it does what you actually want it to do, instead of stirring up a whole bunch of trouble that then you have to kind of walk back and rein in, and it just creates problems in the culture and in the team itself. So, but the big question that you want to ask them, and you also want them to ask each other for any peer working relationships, is, look, I mean, where can I unblock you? Where can I help? And where do I need to get out of the way? Because especially if you're still in that transition of really becoming a good leader, chances are you are still taking through too many things that are really not yours to see through anymore. So, you might start with a good intention of delegating the right way, and actually, instead of just giving people tasks, you give them opportunities and ownership. But if you're thinking you're doing that, but that's not the experience your team is having, you want that feedback. So ask them where you can help them, where you can unblock them, where you need to get out of the way, so that they can actually do what they know how to do, whether you are quite living that reality yet or not. So this is kind of your retrospective. So now you're untangling the ball of yarn from this year. And so we got to make sure that that's happening. But then it's important that you start dusting off the crystal ball, because we want to look at, all right, from this perspective, having just gone through this retrospective, what's next year's greatest potential? So we're going to look at this just for the next year. And then, of course, you want to pull in your 3-year strategic vision and, look at everything that happened this year. How did it fit into your long term? And what adjustments do you need to make? So when you've made those adjustments, the other thing is also now you need to bump it out another year, because one of those 3 years that you did this for is coming to an end. So it's important to bump it out. So it's like we're looking at the next year, and then we're looking at the bigger potential for the next 3 years. And once we've thought about that, again, we go back to the next year and go, okay, now that I've bumped this out further, what do I need to expand that where I have thought too small, where I went too safe, where I didn't take enough opportunities, or do I need to rein myself in because this is going to crash the car if we go that course. So you want to upgrade what you immediately would say by using that long-term vision and making sure that you are stretching it out. This is for you. This is about thinking beyond what your function has been so far, and really look at, how do I need to step into my CEO role in a much more meaningful and expansive way. But then you also want to ask your team to do the same thing. You want them to think beyond their current job descriptions. You want them to really stretch their imagination and their inspiration for where they're going to go. And it's kind of everybody needs to get out of their comfort zone so that we can do a lot better. So we want to, when they do that, you want to really encourage them to think bold, to think crazy, to get it all out there. And I think it's really fun, actually. It'll help your team come up with a lot of energy to workshop that together, so they can kind of egg each other on. They can use that collaborative thinking. They can use that challenging each other to come up with something even better. So then we have a huge board full of ideas and inspiration, and then we go and refine it. So you want them to just do a brain dump, come out with all of it, and then as a team you refine it, and then you go in and then you really refine it, and you let them know why you're making the choices you're making. And that piece is super important, because when your team is showing up, putting all their heart and soul into thinking big and going crazy and doing all that stuff, you want to set them up to say, hey, we're going to go think crazy and think bold. And I just want to set the expectation that we're not going to do all of that. I'm going to come in and I'm going to align all that with our 3-year strategic plan, with our 1-year specific vision and plan for the year. And I'm going to let you know why we do what we do. So now we've set that new North Star. We've done all that thinking. Of course, now we need to get into the doing part. So dreaming is super important. And like I said, you want to do that through these strategy sessions. So you can have one big one, and then you send them away and ask them to do their own strategy sessions with each other to think of those big opportunities. So this is very specific that you do it with them, and then they do it without you, because they're going to be much more able to be transparent and honest with each other as well. So we want to make sure that works. So this is where you get your big opportunities out. Now, of course, once we have that big dream, that's awesome. But now we need to get into action. And the really important part is that doesn't start on January 1st. It starts now, because this is your training ground. This is your sandbox. The next 3 months and 3 weeks are going to be what sets you up right. So when January 1st starts, you are super ready to go. So this is where this next time period is where we really get to push the needle, where we we can really look at, once we've done that retrospective and that planning, what can we do in Q4? And then when we know that, we can use that evidence, that data, and plug it into the next year. So super, super important. So we want to make sure that we set the team up like that. And then we want to ask them to come back to us with a fully loaded Q4 execution plan that is looking at Q4, but with their eye on Q1 and the entire next year. So it's an alignment. Of course, you've already talked through the 3-year strategic, so they have that fresh in their mind, but then they want to come up with that awesome execution plan for Q4 with their eye on the next year, Q1, and the entire year. So in alignment with that, right? We want to make sure that your team constantly understands that they have to keep looking back and forth. They have to look out and then look in, look out and look in. Otherwise, we're going to think too small. We're going to have detours. We're going to make short-sighted decisions. But if we keep looking out, then we don't have enough action and we are not specific about what we're creating. So this is really, they have 3 weeks right now to really sharpen their pencil. And then they have almost 4 months to prove that the strategy that they just came up with is actually working. So prove it and refine it. So in summary, what we talked about is, 1, get real about this year. Make sure that you give yourself feedback, you give each other feedback, you do everything that I just talked about. So you got to get real for what already happened, and then think big about the year coming up, because this is like, start planning now. This is your time to try things out. This is your sandbox. That means that Q1 will be your best launch of a year you've ever had. Now, to do all that, it takes courage. It takes certainty. It really, really takes vision. And a big, big part is you have to make sure that, and this is something to do for yourself and talk to your team about, when you're setting your sights so much higher, you can't just do that with, a retrospective and a plan and then an action plan. I mean, yeah, that's all the foundational stuff that we absolutely need to do, but there's one really big ingredient missing, and that is you and them as who they show up as. So this is the identity piece for the leader you're growing into and they're growing into. Because this is, you can't, your actions can't outgrow you ever. So if you're not resetting your mind and your identity, the way you feel about yourself, the way you show up before you go into that big plan, that means you are going to miss. You're not going to be able to actually execute on it. You're going to lose your steam. You're going to pack it in. You're not going to achieve those big dreams and those big goals. So I hope this helps. We have a brand new training out there that I'm super excited about. So please go into the training and check it out. It has a lot more stuff in it. Go into bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, or click the button somewhere around this video. Check out the training and then reach out if you have any questions or we can help. So have a fabulous week, and I will talk to you next time.